begin with a prayer, and I think we'll begin with an appropriate prayer that we will use kind of as our guide and watchword throughout my talk. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. So everyone knows that prayer. My first encounter with that prayer, my mother owned, and she wasn't particularly much of a practicing Christian at all. She was nominally a Methodist, but she had a small charm bracelet, I think, that she'd had as a child, and it ended up in my toy box. And on the charm bracelet, there was a tiny, the size of a postage stamp or smaller, little silver charm of a Bible, and it said Holy Bible on it. And when you opened it, it had the Lord's Prayer inside. And I was just a child at the time, very, very young, and I'd never been taught the Lord's Prayer, but I was reading it aloud as I was playing outside, and the son of the next-door neighbor, who was an older boy than me, I think a good, 10 years older, and he knew the prayer, and he was reciting it along with me. And he himself wasn't, particularly much of a Christian or anything, I don't think. I think it's just one of those things you know. And the Lord's Prayer comes into you as this kind of thing. You just sort of rattle through it. You say, the 6 times in the rosary. It's said during Mass. It's this very default sort of thing. But really, if you stop and think about it, and this isn't the purpose of my talk, but if you stop and think about the Lord's Prayer, it's actually the perfect microcosm of the Christian life and the Christian devotion. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It speaks to the nature of who God is. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Forgive us our sins as we forgive others. It's absolutely contains, while it doesn't contain doctrine and it doesn't contain specific moral precepts, it makes it very, very clear the fundamentals of what it is to be a Christian. And you can really meditate deeply for hours just on the Lord's Prayer. And as an exercise, I kind of recommend that. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the notion of the daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. And it's a very interesting phrase, because you think about it, and what are we talking about there when we say, give us this day our daily bread? Well, we're not talking literally about bread. There are millions of people in the world, billions of people in the world who never eat bread. And they don't. You get east of Constantinople, and it's all rice. There's an entire culture, an entire set of civilizations who get their daily allowance of calories, their carbohydrates that come in from rice or something similar to that. They don't make bread, The Italians don't make bread, they make pasta, which is not quite the same thing, Until the conquest of the Americas by the Europeans, there wasn't, the same sort of bread. But what does bread mean if it doesn't mean just bread? Well, it doesn't just mean food either. And this, I think, is a key point. Daily bread means everything that you need for that day. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us today, Lord, what we need for today. And so that's why I think that phrase is so beautiful, because you're asking God to say, please, what I need for today, give me it. There's also a wonderful phrase in the book of Isaiah, the scroll of Isaiah. I believe it's from chapter 55, but my specific positioning of Scripture is a little rusty here periodically. But in the scroll of Isaiah, it says, "Why spend your wages for what is not bread? Why spend your money for what fails to satisfy?" Now, of course, you could say, well, there's many things that I need to buy that are not bread. I need to buy drink. I need to buy meat. I need to buy fruit. I need to buy a shelter to put over my head. I need clothes. Well, stop. Why spend your wages for what is not bread? Why do you spend your wages on things that you do not need, that you fail to satisfy? Why do you spend your wages in a manner that is not helpful to you? And that is one of the things that I want to talk about today. This talk is called Men of Brass, Spending Your Wages. And I want to talk a bit about brass and how we can be men of brass, and that isn't actually a good thing, but I also want to talk about spending the wages. Who remembers the parable that Jesus tells about the man with the barns? I'll give you a quick précis of it if you don't remember. There's a man who's very wealthy. He's very successful. He has loads and loads of stuff. He is rich. He's wealthy. He owns loads and loads of goods. And he says, you know what I will do? I will tear down my barns and I will build new barns, bigger barns, so that I can put all of my treasure in there and I can kick back. I can kick back and everything will be stored in my barns and I've got it made in the shade. And then the parable says, fool, which is that's a pretty damning thing to say. You know, Jesus Christ says, you know, if you call your brother fool, well, you're liable for that. But that's the word used, fool. That's a serious admonition. And he says, fool, tonight your life will be demanded of you. Okay, so why is this barn builder, this guy building his huge barns, these storehouses, putting his stuff in there, why is he a fool in the eyes of God? Is he a fool because tonight, your soul will be demanded of you? Well, no. Who could know? You can't call a man a fool based on something he could have no knowledge of whatsoever. He's not foolish because tonight his life is going to be demanded of him. He is foolish because he's putting stuff in barns. What are you doing with all of your goods? What are you doing with all of the things that you have? You're sticking them in barns and saying, you know what? I got it made in the shade. All out for the future, we're golden, we're great, we're fine. I've set this storehouse, this treasury up, and I don't need to do anything more. Fool. Fool. That's what it is. You know, tonight your life will be demanded from you, and you've got all this stuff left there. It's not fool, you stuck it in a barn. It's fool, you didn't spend it on your daily bread. And that's the key point. So we've been talking about spending. You know, let's spend things. So let's actually bring this down to a concrete notion. I know there's a few guys here from Canada, but I think the most of you are from the United States. This is a $20 bill. It's got Andrew Jackson on it, not Harriet Tubman. But there's a $20 bill. Legal tender for all debts, public and private. How much is that worth? $20. But how much is $20 worth? Now, if you go to Europe, you can go to the Bureau de Change, and I looked this up, you can get 17 euros and 29 cents. Okay, the dollar and the euro, they're kind of at parity at the moment. So you know what? If you want to go to Londonistan or whatever, you want to buy some stuff from some Muslims, you can go to Europe. Actually, to be perfectly honest, if you go to Londonistan, you know, and you want to go to there, it's worth £15 and 38 pence. Again, that's what it's worth there. If you go to Canada, it's worth $25.98 Canadian. But again, those are just numbers. You know, I could hold up, you know, a handful of Canadian bills here and say, well, okay, this is $25.98 Canadian cents. What's it worth? It's worth 20 American dollars. No. What is this worth? It's worth whatever you can buy with it. This is a key point. So you can go into McDonald's and go to the dollar menu and say, holla, I want 20 cheeseburgers, please. And they'll hook you up with 20 cheeseburgers. You can take this $20 bill and you can take it to our store in there and you can get the t-shirt. It's $20. You know, you can pay, depending on what your mortgage is, maybe you can probably pay about a day of your mortgage. If your mortgage is $600 a month, it's a day of your mortgage. You can buy groceries, you can buy food, you can put gas in the car. That's what it's worth. What do you spend it on? That's what a wage, that's what money is worth. But equally, you can say, we'll put gas in the car, we'll put groceries in the table, you know, I'll buy my mortgage, I'll pay my mortgage off. You know what? You could go take this down the newsagent, you can get some dirty magazines. And you could. People do that all the time. You could go into a bar, and you could buy $20 worth of alcohol, and you could get blind drunk. You could go down to wherever the dodgy part of your town is, in Detroit, south of 8 Mile, into Detroit itself, and you can find some guy standing on the street corner, and he could sell you some kind of illegal drugs for $20. I don't know how much drugs you can get for $20, because I'm, pretty straight edge, but I'm sure you could get some. Why do you all laugh when you say I'm straight edge, really? Look, there's plenty of things I've confessed. Drug use is not one of them, I'll give you that. So the whole thing is, why would you spend, to come back to Isaiah, why would you spend money on things that do not satisfy? Why are you spending money on things that are not bread? Now, obviously, those examples, pornography, alcohol abuse, drugs, taking out a hit on someone, there's a whole list of bad things you can do with money. Obviously, those things are clearly, we shy away from those. As Catholics, we go, oh no. There was this revulsion when I said you could go and buy dirty magazines. But are we not maybe guilty sometimes of spending our wages on what is not bread, on what fails to satisfy? And that is kind of the key point here that I want to talk about. Now, the translation, I haven't actually looked at the original Hebrew of Isaiah. Maybe I should, because the translation that I see most commonly is wages. Now, for those of you in the audience who've been around the block a few times like myself, you will understand the difference between a wage and a salary. See the smiles. And of course, there's the younger ones who are thinking, what? What's the difference? Okay, let's bottom line it for you. A salary, you don't get overtime. That's how it works. You know what? If you're a salaried employee, you're on like $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, whatever. That's all you get. It doesn't matter how much work you put in. It doesn't matter if you clock in a little late, clock out a little late. Provided they don't fire you, they're going to give you a salary. A wage, you're paid by the hour. That's how it works. That's the difference. It may be more appropriate to speak about salaries here. Because what, of course, we're talking about, we're not talking about money, like, Andrew Jackson on the 20. No. What we are talking about is we are talking about the salary that God gives you. And what does God give you, really? What does God give you that you can spend? Time. Every single day you wake up with a bank account, I worked this out, 86,400 seconds in it. You wake up, that's it, that's 24 hours, right there. You wake up with 86,400 seconds in your bank account, and you have got to spend them all. You will not get any more. There is not a single thing that you can do to get one more second in your day. And there is not one way that you can say, well, I want to save some seconds for tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a big day, so can I just bank a couple hours so we can have a 26-hour day tomorrow? You don't get to do that. Even assuming that you're going to put in 8 hours of sleep, okay, you're still left with 57,600 seconds. That's what you're left with. Now, think about that in terms of money, okay? Think about that in terms of money. Think about that. Each second is a penny. Each second is 1 cent. So you're looking at $576 each day. That's what you have, and you've got to spend it. And at the end of the day, whatever you have left is taken away. Whatever you didn't spend is taken away. So you've got to spend it. What do you spend it on? This is what I want you to think about. Now, there's a very interesting exercise, and I don't necessarily want you to do it now, but maybe at home, do it. Get a bit of paper, draw a line down the middle. And on one side, write down the top 5, 10 things, doesn't matter, just the top things that you say, these are really important to me. My wife, my faith, my family, my football team, my job, whatever, put it down. The stuff that you say, this is what I'm really passionate about. You want to say my faith. You want to say, political activism, a specific political cause, I want to, change the political rules in my constituency. I want to get this guy elected. Maybe you really want to do something with the faith. You think, it's really important for me to take down all of these sodomite cardinals and deal with that. It's really important for me to get adoration at my parish. Write down what's important to you. And then, take a break, stop for a second, On the other side, write down how you spend a day in terms of time. So you get up at whatever time you get up. What do you do for the first 10 minutes? I get up, I go to the bathroom, I get up, I have a coffee, I get up, I muck around on Facebook for a bit, I drive to work, I'm at work. What do you do at work? List how you spend your day and compare the two lists. And then take the first list you wrote and screw it up and throw it away because it is a lie. Because what is important to you is how you spend your time. Now, fine, you can blow some of this stuff out because it's the basic mechanics of staying alive. You know what? 8 hours of sleep. Is sleep important to anyone? No. No one's passionate about sleep. Okay, yeah, one crowd. No one thinks, I really want to, it's a thing, I really want to do it. No, you have to sleep. Eating. You know what? If you're passionate about eating, you're getting into gluttony at that point. How much is it getting there? The basic mechanics of staying alive, sleeping, shaving, showering, eating, fine. They suck up your time. But the rest of the time that you have a choice about, that tells you what's important. That's how you're spending your wages. And that's exactly what the point of this talk is. As men, we've heard, from these other great speakers, how to be a man in a world that hates men. Let's go out and be men. How to overcome lust. The Dr. Alan Keyes' wonderful presentation on how to be, a citizen man. But really, ultimately, it comes down to this. How are you spending those wages? What are you spending them on? Are you spending them on something good, something important to you? Or are you just kind of saying, yeah, this is important to me, but I'm not driving anything to it? Out of that, $576 that I get, how many of those dollars am I actually paying to buy the things that I want? Stop and think about that. Think about that as an exercise. You'll find it very, very helpful as you go along. Now, when Mike introduced me, he said that his brother and I had the same accent, which I always bite my tongue whenever he says that, because his family is from Lancashire, and my family is from Yorkshire. Now, those two names may mean nothing to you, which is fine, because I get it, you're all from the other side of the Atlantic. But, okay, imagine if I said, well, he's a Palestinian and he's an Israeli. It's kind of like that. It's a joke. There are people you don't confuse for each other. Greeks and Turks, Pakistanis and Indians, North and South Koreans, Israelis and Palestinians, and Lancastrians and Yorkshiremen. You just don't do it. But having said that, the accent is very similar. I grew up in Yorkshire. People ask, where I'm from, and I always say I'm from Sheffield, and that's a bit of a fudge. I went to university in Sheffield, and I lived there for all of my adult life, from when I was 18 until I came to the United States. But I was born in a little working-class town called Pontefract, which is in West Yorkshire. And it is the most strategically important location in the United Kingdom. The Great North-South Road and the Great East-West Road, which have stood there since pre-Roman times, cross right there at Pontefract. That's where they cross. And when Norman the Conqueror came over in 1066, one of the first things that he did was send a man called Ilbert de Lacy to build a dirty great big castle right there. And Pontefract is a working-class town. It is a hard-scrabble working-class town famous for making licorice, making furniture, being the first place to declare Charles II king after the Civil War, and also it's surrounded by coal mines. The coal mines have now gone the way of the dodo after Margaret Thatcher broke the power of the unions. But I grew up there, and my father was the local school teacher. And so I grew up in kind of the middle-class area of Pontefract. But I grew up with working-class Yorkshire people. And the reason that I say this little biography is because now I want to talk about brass. Now, we all know about brass, or brass, depending on how you want to pronounce it. It's a copper alloy. It's an alloy of copper and zinc. And it is, familiar to all of us. Obviously, a lot of American men here. I'm sure a lot of you have fired off guns, and you've, policed your brass at the end of it. You've collected your brass at the end, the brass shell casings. But in England, one of the words used for money, especially among working class people from Yorkshire, is brass. And the reason is, of course, is that back in the day, decades and decades ago, the commonest coin seen by a person would be one of these copper alloy coins. You know, like your pennies are made of that copper alloy, and you see President Lincoln looking the wrong way. Seriously, look at it. Line up all the coins. President Lincoln's looking the wrong way. If you'd been shot in the back of the head, you would be looking over your shoulder too. But brass is an expression. And so you say, oh, he's got plenty of brass, meaning he's a rich man. You'd say that about the mill owner or something. Oh, he's got plenty of brass. You would say as well, there's a wonderful expression that I've always loved, where there's muck, there's brass. Meaning, when a job is difficult and dirty, there's money to be made in it, which I think is just a wonderful expression of working class pride. I think that's beautiful. My accent, obviously, I don't know if you can tell the difference. My accent does have a certain middle class element in the UK. I didn't fit in necessarily in my hometown when I was growing up, but I still have a great deal of pride in that blue collar environment that says where there's muck, there's brass. We work hard for our money. And there are many communities like that in the United States. I've spoken about them. The places like Scranton, Pennsylvania. All of these things. I think of Scranton every time because, of course, it's Joe Biden. Hanging out in the Home Depot there, which I think had closed about 4 years before he said that. But I think about these places, and what you have at that point is you have a pride that says, I put my work in. I got down into the muck, I got my hands dirty, I got my fingernails dirty, I broke my life down in the mines or in the steel mill or, toiling on the land or whatever, Or heck, nowadays, I was a wage slave in an office. I lived in a cubicle farm and I breathed recycled air and I saw fluorescent lights for 40 years. And you know what? I put my kids through college and I paid off my mortgage and where there's muck, where there's hard work, there's brass, there's money. So that's one of the things that I want to think about when we think about brass. It's cheap. It's inexpensive. That's why you use it to make coins. It's a token that we use in coinage to pass around, but we use it for a whole bunch of other things as well. And there's an anecdote that I want to tell now that I'm sure some of you will appreciate that illustrates kind of the main point of the second half of my talk. Who here has been in the United States military? Hands up. Thank you for your service. Who here was Navy or Marines? Hoorah. Okay. Who remembers the officers? Maybe some of you were officers. Who remembers the officers? People here remember the officers. People remember them. Okay, so they've got the bars and what have you on their shoulder. And it's called brass. When we talk about the brass. What's the brass going to say about that? Well, meaning, what's the officer cadre going to say about that? What are they going to say about this? Back in England, I directed a play. I was in an amateur dramatics group. I'm unaccustomed to public speaking, but I directed it. And I directed a play, and I directed Aaron Sorkin's A Few Good Men, which, and you may very well have seen the movie. It was a play before it was a movie, and the movie is the one with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. It's the You Can't Have. It's that one, remember? It's the court scene. And it's all about the Marines and the JAG Corps, and it's very, very good. Anyway, I directed this movie, and we had the costumer bring in, and we had Marine battle dress, and we had, starched white uniforms for the Navy, and it was all very good. And she acquired from some supplier, I'm sure they weren't real, but she acquired from some supplier the rank markings for all the officers, all of them. And they were being handed out. It's like, well, who are you? Well, you're Lieutenant Caffey, so there's your lieutenant's bars. You're the lieutenant commander. You're the major. You're the colonel. Hand them out. And the colonel, the chap playing the colonel, looked at his, I think it's silver oak leaf, and he looked at it, and then he looked over at the major, and the major has a gold oak leaf in his hand. And he goes, I'm a colonel, he's a major. Why do Why do I have silver and he has gold? And I said, it ain't gold. It's brass. But it's very highly polished. And if you polish brass hard enough, it looks gold. I think there's actually an expression in the United States military about first lieutenants, which is two brass bars, and they polish them so much because they shine and shine and shine and shine and shine until at casual glance they look silver. And it's like an expression, I forget what it is, it's like a butter bars captain or something, and he's trying to be a captain by polishing his butt because the insignia is there. And this leads me to a wonderful phrase that occurs in the book The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. And in that, C.S. Lewis is taken on a journey through purgatory, essentially, by George MacDonald, who was Lewis's hero, an author. And he it's very much like Dante's Inferno in many ways. And he takes him through purgatory, and he's explaining things to him. And he asks the question. Lewis asks the question. This has always stuck with me. Lewis asks the question, well, is it better to be some grand sinner, or is it better to be, close to where you should be? And George MacDonald says, well, it's better and it's worse. Brass is more easily mistaken for gold than clay is. And I found that brilliant. Okay, let me say that again. Brass is more easily mistaken for gold than clay is. If you've got brass, you're holding a brass oak leaf in your hand, and you look at it and you go, well, that's gold. So I'm more important than the colonel who's just got silver. That's what you think. You're not shocked out of your mire. You're not shocked out of your sinfulness or failure because you look at it and you go, it's shiny and it's gold and it's not, it's brass. If you looked at it and you had just like a lump of clay in there, or you had a bit of wood or something like that, you would go, well, no, this isn't good enough. I am told that I should be gold. I should have a gold badge. That's what I should be. I should be a man of gold. And you turn and you look at yourself in the mirror and you take your soul out and you see brass. And if you're not really, really carefully looking, you'll think it's gold. Let's bring this down. Let's bring this down to actual examples. You've got some guy, and for whatever reason, he went off the tracks at an early age, and he mixes up with bad company. And he gets a woman pregnant, very young. And he abandons his duties with the woman. And he ends up in, again, bad company. He commits crimes. He goes to jail. He becomes addicted to drugs in jail. He gets let out of jail. He commits crimes again. He goes back. And His life is a mess. He has no job. He has no future. He has no projects. He's got a rap sheet as long as his arm. He's got, maybe children by several different women that he doesn't see. He's addicted to drugs. His life is a mess. We could say this about a whole bunch of people. We could say this as I was reading his blog just a few days ago. Joseph Chambra. I think all of you may be familiar with him. He was absolutely mired in the homosexual lifestyle. Absolutely mired in it. He was engaging in producing homosexual pornography. That man, when he has that moment, when the mirror is held up or he opens his soul and looks at it, whatever makes him do that, he goes, I am mud. I am a worm. I am nothing. And he looks and he sees that and it shakes him out of it. Now, none of you, I think, are in that situation right now. But you may very well be in a situation of being like brass. Are you, let's go back to that list earlier. That list of things that you say, these are the things that are important to me, and here's how I spend my time. Do they match? Do they match up? Are you, we've heard Mike talk about, being a soldier of Our Lady. Do we give the time and energy we need to Our Lady? Are we being men of gold, or are we being men of brass? Are we doing things that are good? Things that are good and worthy? Are we working hard? Are we paying off our mortgage? Are we keeping our credit card down? Are we keeping our lawn nicely trimmed so the home association doesn't come along and slap a fine on us? Do we clean our car on a Sunday so it's nice and shiny and it's like, you know what, it doesn't look like one of those beat-up, rusted buckets that we see driving along, you know? Do we have a nice sort of, white picket fence sort of suburban thing, you know? Do we take our sons out and we teach them how to shoot, how to hunt, how to fish? Do we teach them how to wrench on a car? All of these things are good things, but you know what? They ain't gold. Heaven is gold. The pavements of heaven are made with gold. The thing you walk on in heaven is gold. Loving Our Lady, loving our Lord, these are gold. You will be judged on these things. And the problem with being a man of brass is that those things can trick you. You can look at them and you can go, well, I'm a good person. Okay? And I'll grant that. Even setting aside Jesus' admonition that why do you say good, only God is good? Fine, you're a good person. You pay your taxes, you work hard. You don't borrow money from people. You don't cheat on your taxes. You don't cheat on your wife. You don't cheat at all. You're a straight, good, honest dealing man. You raise up the next generation to be decent. You help all the people that you can. Really? Are you throwing everything that you have out of those wages that you get from God every single day? You know? Those $576 that you don't spend asleep, how many of those are you giving back to God? How many of those are you doing that? Or is it like, oh, no, I'm spending this one on my family, this one on my wife, and I'm not even thinking about first saying, well, no, I'm spending it on my family because that's truly spending to God. Or I'm spending it to God and I know that it will come to my family. However you want to slice the metaphor, does God get paid in your world? Now, I don't have an answer for each of you. I mean, I'm sure, I could sit down and I could do the Dr. Phil thing with each of you and we could talk away and da-da-da-da-da, and we could do that. I'm bald like him. But this is the moment that you have to do yourselves. You all go to confession. I've seen the lines out there. You all go to confession. You all, I'm sure, examine your conscience. Examine it and say, well, wait a minute, what am I doing with my time? Am I a man of bronze, a man of brass, or am I a man of gold? Really, truly, honestly. Now, why do we talk about gold? Why do we talk so much about gold? Because we think about it, it's like, you know what? Whoever grabbed an AR-15 and loaded it up with rounds where the casings were made of gold? Nobody did that. Why? Because it deforms. What do we do with gold? Really? We buy jewelry, We buy jewelry and we give it to our wives, Interesting fact, did you know in India, it is a whole issue of that you hold your wealth in gold. The housewives of India have more gold by a factor of about 3 than is in Fort Knox. Completely unrelated to the story, I just thought it was interesting. When doing the research, you come across all kinds of fascinating things. Why gold, though? Well, here's an interesting thing with gold. Gold is non-reactive. Gold is one of the first metals that humanity managed to work and find. Now, why is that? You can have, if you reduce the earth to the size of, I think, about half of this room, and you said, show me all the gold, it's about the size of a wedding ring. That's it. All the gold in the earth is about the size of the wedding ring. Yes, it's one of the first metals that we found and worked. Why? Because it's non-reactive. When you dig it out of the ground, it's gold. It's not ore. For any of you who've worked like in the steel industry or any kind of metalworking industry, when you get ore out of the ground, you've got to hammer it, you've got to heat it up, you've got to put it through all these processes to pull out iron, to pull out copper, to pull out bronze because they're reactive. Gold is non-reactive, it's just there. Gold is pure and it remains and it perdures. Doesn't matter what you do with it. You can dunk it in water, you can dunk it in salt water, you can dunk it in acid. There are very few things that eat their way through it. That's what it is to be a golden man. That's what it is to be a golden Christian. You can get dirty, you can get covered in crud, but you know what? Your core of gold remains. And you can go to confession, you can get scrubbed off, and hey, we're back and we're shiny. Brass turns to verdigris. And by the time you clean that off, you're considerably smaller than you were before. And verdigris is highly, highly toxic. Gold, you can beat gold absolutely flat. You can beat gold so flat that it's finer than human hair and it still retains its luster. You can stretch gold out into a thin wire and it allows you to do it. Gold is malleable, gold endures. That is why we talk about gold. That is what you need to be as a Christian man. You need to be pure, you need to be uncorruptible, and you need to be able to be battered and beaten and still show your luster. There's another issue of gold. To get gold out of, not from an alloy, not from a mixture, not from an ore, but just when it's all in a bunch of crud, there's tiny little specks of gold in a bunch of crud, you put it in a crucible, which is the typical original crucible is a ceramic pot about the size of a couple of cupped hands, and you blast heat at it. You absolutely blast heat at the thing. Now, nowadays, of course, they do it with massive crucibles and huge gas-fired things and all this sort of stuff. Back in the day, charcoal burner, and you can get a huge temperature on a charcoal burner. And out of the crucible, everything else burns off, and the gold just sits there. It melts and it glows, and it just sits there, and it remains pure. Why is it called a crucible? Anyone know? Crucible comes from the Latin for cross. It comes from the Latin for cross because originally a crucible was a lampstand that you would put in front of a crucifix. But I think that is appropriate because out of the crucible, out of the cross, comes gold. Put gold in you. Get gold. Take your wages that you get each day and buy gold. Now, I know I sound like William Devane right now. See, everyone watches Fox News. That's all. That's the only thing on Fox News. It's William Devane telling me to buy gold. William Devane tells me to buy gold, beautiful blonde women can't pronounce the names of countries, and Alex Jones tells me Barack Obama is going to steal my pig. That's what's on Fox News. But, buy gold. Meaning, take your time, your wages, and you know what? Go out and get gold. Buy something golden. Get on your knees in front of the golden tabernacle and pray to God and say, God, make of me a golden man. Give me the eyes to see. Give me the chemical ability, the chemist's eye to say, that is brass. You know what? That is brass. I'm a good person, yes, fine. I raise money for this. I give things to the local charities. I'm a good person. I'm not Adolf Hitler. Everyone seems to want to be graded on the curve when it comes to salvation. I'm not Hitler. Well, wow. Applause. The bar's about here right now. But having said that, you look at these good people out there, and you say they're good people. You look at these people like, Bill Gates. Bill Gates gives millions of dollars to all kinds of charities. He does good work. Now, the fact that he does terrible things as well, no. The man of brass glosses over that. And he polishes this brazen idol of Bill Gates and says, well, look at all the money and all the good that he does to people. What about some atheist who does good? There are plenty of atheists out there who do good. Are they saved? Are they men of gold? No, because they have not purchased with their time, with those $576 that they get each day, they have not purchased gold. Why is this important? Why is it important to be a golden man? And why is it important, to be honest, to be a fully golden man? We've all seen the vision of Daniel in the book of Daniel, the statue with the head of gold and the shoulders of silver, and it goes down and down. And you can quickly do a Google search for that, and you can find 1,000 interpretations that speak about every empire that ever there was. But you look at that and say, well, clearly the golden head was the great empire. Why is it important to be fully gold? Not just bits of you, not just your head, not just your hands, not just your heart. Why do you have to be fully gold? Because all of you will be dropped into the crucible. All of you. I'm going to ask a question right now, and I want people to answer it honestly. Who is here completely and utterly, actually, no, I won't because it may embarrass you, but think about this. Who is here completely and utterly of their own free will, and who was persuaded or told to come here, perhaps by a parent? Just don't answer me, but think about that. Okay, for those of you who were told to be here, maybe you were dragged here by your father, or you were told you're going to go to this thing, okay? Welcome to the war. I have no sympathy whatsoever for you. And I don't. You know what? Because I don't have sympathy for myself. You know what? I started doing this when I was 30 years old, and as I said before, I was the son of a Yorkshire teacher from a working class town. And you know what I do now? I'm the point of the spear in a battle for the soul of the church. That's what's happening right now. Mike's going to give us an update on this whole horrible, sordid thing going on in the episcopate after this. But we all know it's happening. It's a battle for the soul of the priesthood. It's a battle for the soul of the church. It's the great crisis of our time. And you know what? Like it or not, you are all in it. You are all in it up to your eyeballs. Why are you in it up to your eyeballs? Because you were the wrong people in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm sorry, this is just the way it works. God has come along and he said, you can be then and there. And you know what? You can be then and there, and you can come and you can listen to this crazy line. You blatter on about brass and gold. And now you know what you are? You're culpable. You're culpable in this war. The crucible is coming. You will be dipped in it. And you will be dipped in it, and if you are not gold, you will burn for eternity. That is the only thing that will endure. Anything that is not gold will be burned away one way or another. It will be burned away now, or it will be burned away in hell. And you know what? The fires of hell don't go out. Get yourself golden right now. Because I know I've said, you've been chosen, and it's bad for you, and you just got to fight, and it's terrible for you, and I have no sympathy. I don't. But you have also been given the greatest gift that can be given a man. You have been given a war to fight. This is the war for the soul of the church. Let's go back 100 years. 100 years. The world was on the verge of ending World War I at that point, I think. Yes. On the verge of ending World War I. I've got my dates right. There'd been this horrible, terrible conflict. So what was the conflict at the time? It was World War I. Next generation comes along, it's to end the horrors of Nazism. It's World War II. You can go then and say, well, then there was the Korean War. You can go back to the 18th century. You can go back or as much as you like. And there's always a crisis. There's always a thing to fight. But personally, and I think Bishop Athanasius Schneider agrees with me, this crisis right now, this war for the soul of the church, the war for the soul of the priesthood, this is it. This is all the chips in. There is nothing left. This is like every single division, every single army. Pull them up. Let's go. This is for all the marbles, boys. You get to fight it. Stop and think about that for a second. Out of all the times and all the places that you could have been born, of all the things that you could be, what are you? You are here, you are now, you are a man, and you know this. Our Lady has said very clearly and very simply to every single one of us here who knows this, you are my chosen warriors. You will be the instrument that I will fight with. Now, you know what? I've done this for 10 years now. Men like Dr. Keyes, who has disappeared off. I'm sure he's gone to relax because he's really been putting it out there. Dr. Keyes, he's been doing it his whole life. Michael Etchborn's been doing it longer than me. Mike's been doing it longer than me. But you know what? I am still humbled by the fact that I get to do this. I get to do this. I get to be the sword in the hand of Our Lady. So do you. You are a chosen army, chosen by the Queen of Heaven. Arm yourself in gold. Arm yourself in gold. Arm yourselves with gold. Make of yourselves golden men. You are the army of heaven. Act like it. Thank you.